Thank you and good morning to everyone. I'll speak on gender equality as a sociological issue, and I would like to start by specifying the title of my intervention, Gender Equality as a Sociological Issue. In this sense, we should differentiate the scientific facet of sociology and from the application derived from sociological knowledge. From my point of view, this means considering the following precision: gender equality as a social issue and versus gender inequality as a sociological issue. Talking about gender equality refers more to a desire or a value of social justice that a society, an international body, a political party, or a social movement, such as feminism, can defend to promote social change. This is not the work of sociology. Sociology is dedicated to describing and explaining social phenomena from a scientific point of view, constructing theories and objectively conceptualizing social reality. Therefore, it is appropriate to speak of gender inequality to account for the social reality in which we live. In scientific activity, we must clearly distinguish between knowledge objectives, applying the scientific method, from political objectives. Which does not mean that they are both a concern of sociology, but objectified knowledge is the goal of sociology, and the applicability of that knowledge is a consequent goal derived from this knowledge. With sociology, we elaborate diagnosis of the social reality, in particular of an unequal society, from the point of view of gender. With the applicability, we propose instruments of consistent social action, of social justice, but they must separate. Sorry. Thus, the work of sociology as a scientific discipline is to describe and explain the social mechanisms that operate in social relations. Social relations are power relations that generate differentiated social positions of individuals and different social groups with higher or lower levels of social inequality. Gender social relations is a specific form of expression of social inequalities. Hence, it is necessary to consider the complexity of the issues concerning social inequality and their multidimensional trait and the interdisciplinary approaches. The concept of social inequality is central in social sciences, and as has been long argued in sociology, the differences do not imply inequalities, but inequalities are based on certain differences, which per se are neither good nor bad, but which can become institutionalized by forming a state of things that consolidates, remains, and is reproduced in the social structure. We understand social inequalities as the expression of certain observable social differences in terms of hierarchical positions according to the values established in a society. They involve unequal distributions of access to resources, economic, educational, and cultural, relational, health, etc., opportunities, prestige, or power through mechanisms that depend on certain social traits like class, gender, race, ethnicity, age, etc., establishing the basis of institutionalized social stratification system. On the other hand, as I said previously, social inequality can be linked from a normative point of view to social justice, but with the implications that it entails for the people freedom. Social justice focuses on the concept of equity in relations between individuals in society and equal access to wealth, opportunities, and social privileges. Amartya Sen expressed this in terms of people's freedom to make decisions in life and to have opportunities. Then we could say that wealth, capital, rent, income, property, etc., life opportunities, access to goods and services, risk, power, technology, and in general terms, and to quote Rosemary Crompton, an equal distribution of material and symbolic rewards, not only influence, determine, and consequently structure the position in social system, but also affect individual freedom. In this context, gender inequalities have been the object of primary attention in sociology based on the contribution of the feminist movement and the different feminists that fought and are fighting for equality between men and women. Gender inequality is a global phenomenon that has characterized all societies since their origins. Our societies have been and are androcentric, where the power of men is dominant in a system of patriarchy, that is, where male supremacy rules in public and private life. For the analysis of patriarchy and gender inequalities in sociology, the distinction between sex and gender is fundamental in order to differentiate the biological dimension from the cultural dimension. Thus, we can to overcome biological determinism and show that masculine and the feminine is fundamentally a social construction of the socialization process and the roles that society has traditionally assigned to males and females. Therefore, it is a constructed identity of the person that is detached from the natural dimension, although it does not deny the biological sexual differences, obviously. In this sense, men and women share more or less masculine or more or less feminine sociocultural traits. While from the biological point of view, we distinguish only two sexes, from the gender point of view, we could define not only two extreme ideal types, being men or being woman. Between these two poles, people could be placed along a continuum depending on whether he or she possesses more or less masculine or feminine sociocultural traits. Furthermore, if we combine sex and gender, we could speak of male man and woman and female man and woman. In sociology, we use sex as an indicator of gender because gender is very difficult to measure. It's a complex concept to operationalize, and in general, we consider that a male trained to be a man and a female trained to be a woman. On the other hand, incorporating the gender perspective in sociology implies bringing to show realities that have traditionally been hidden, in particular those that refer to private life and in general to those aspects that have been considered as feminine. The gender perspective is gradually being imposed in society and in the scientific activity of all disciplines since the United Nations began conferences in 1995. Perspective has become widespread in social and political life, highlighting its transversal nature in the different social spheres to guarantee women's rights and social justice. Sustainable Development Goal number 5 of the United Nations refers to gender equality and is a very important global reference that guides the actions of government, organizations, and institutions to achieve the goal of equality. In the field of science, also, not only in gender studies, but in those of any aspect of research, as Sandra highlighted before. Scientific research that shows the social reality of women and gender inequalities is enormous, and the gender perspective is gradually being incorporated into the research. Multiple studies and indicators in different areas of social life can be shown: the sexism of language, legal discrimination, and their evaluation in religion, violence facing women, etc., etc. A central dimension in which gender inequality is expressed refers to sexual division of labor, that is, to the social construction of gender, where the assignment of tasks and responsibilities are different based on a biological sex. In this sense, in sociology, we speak of the productive sphere and the reproductive sphere, and we conceptualize work in a broad sense, differentiating productive work and reproductive work. Productive work is paid, public, valued, and socially recognized. Reproductive work is unpaid, private, and unvalued. The first is occupied mainly by men, and second by women. Times studies in particular have shown existing inequalities as well as changes toward equality that are obviously taking place, but we are still far from equality and a true balance between work and family life. This double dimension that I comment of work with other domains, as Enrico shows before, is taken into account by the Gender Equality Index elaborated by the European Institute for Gender Equality for the 28 European member states. This index takes into account 6 main dimensions. The domain of work measures the extent to which women and men can benefit from equal access to employment and good working conditions. The domain of money measures gender inequalities in access to financial resources and women's and men's economic situation. The domain of knowledge measures gender inequalities in educational attainment, participation in educational and training over the life course, and mainly gender segregation. The domain of time measures gender inequalities in allocation of time spent doing care and domestic work and social activities. The domain of power measures gender equality in decision-making position across the political, economic, and social spheres. And finally, the domain of health measures gender equality in 3 health-related aspects: health status, health behavior, and access to health services. The Gender Equality Index 2020 report highlights that the overall index score for the European Union in 2018 is 60.9 on a scale from 0 to 100. The score has increased by 4 points since 2010. At this pace, 1 point every 2 years, it will take more than 60 years to achieve gender equality in the European Union. Maybe it is a bad news, or perhaps it is not so bad if finally we have our real equality. Sweden is the best score, Greece is the worst, and in our ReGEM Project, we analyzed 4 cases: Italy, Spain, France, and Germanic that in this figure are highlighted, as you can see. In this report, highlight the aspect of COVID pandemic and points out that there is a risk that the fragile gains achieved with regards to women's independence in the past decade will be rolled back, and this is a claim of this report. Finally, I can comment that for 28 countries as a whole, improvement in this index are observed in all domains. However, the pace is relatively slow in some domains, and in some countries, the trend has not always been positive. The Gender Equality Index plays, in this sense, a crucial role in assessing impacts and bringing evidence to policymakers on change in gender inequality. Thus, the index shows country-level achievement and areas to improvement. A concluding remark, the future of humanity must be the transit through the path of equality and gender equality in particular. There are many advances that are taking place, especially in the most developed countries, but there is a long way to go. Gender equality is not yet a reality for millions and millions of Europeans and in all the world. To this end, sociology provides elements for reflection and helps to show the unequal nature of our society and the unequal and discriminated position of women. Thank you for your attention.